Sanski Most is a city on the border between Bosnia, Herzegovina and Republika Srpska, the two entities, and during the war it was a site of very heavy war. Today, of course, the war is over, but the city is still very much divided. It's still very scarred by war. And we visited a wonderful NGO called SIM, a Center for Peace Building, and they do amazing stuff to really help. Like reconciliation and establishing a sustainable peace in the area, which is incredibly difficult. They really believe in the young people. They try to bring together young people from all the different ethnic groups. They organize a big summer camp for young people, which is really effective to actually bring the youth together. We visited another wonderful NGO, NGO of women for war widows, and the idea of the NGO is to offer space for the women who are widows after the war and have terrible stories to tell. And then these two strong women who set up this NGO, they listen to these women, and they are trained to help these women live with their story and to continue life after they've experienced such terrible things, and they teach these women how to actually handle that. But here in Sanski Most was the first time where we actually got to meet the local people of Bosnia. We got to meet some people of our own age and walk around the town, just talk to them, not necessarily about complicated stuff, but just about what their life looks like. And that was I think a very important part of the trip, to meet such wonderful, nice and welcoming people who are also really interested in us and are really trying, very inspiring people as well. Very strong people who are trying to create some change in the region, and their parents who are so scarred by the war, and they have also inherited a lot of that tension, and still they try to work around it.
I want to talk a little bit about our final stop from the trip. After leaving Sanski Most in northern Bosnia, we traveled a little further east and arrived at the capital of the Serb entity of Bosnia-Herzegovina, which is called Republika Srpska. And the city, Banja Luka, hosts the center of government for that entity. We had the pleasure of meeting with several government officials, including the mayor of Banja Luka and the president of the Republika Srpska National Assembly. And to my great surprise and to my great pleasure, we also met with President Milorad Dodik, who has been a very controversial figure in Balkan politics for a while, in his allegedly nationalist and radical positions, and in pursuing a more tough line and proclaiming that Republika Srpska should declare its independence from Bosnia and Herzegovina. But arriving there, I can say that while I do not agree personally with many of the opinions expressed by Mr. Dodik and the other officials we met with, they presented their position in a very clear manner, with much less of a bias than one would have expected. Above all, the local press and the press in the entity was, falling on us, trying to get us to present a pro-government opinion, and questioning a lot of the members of the trip. Oh, do you agree with President Dodik? Do you think that our government functions well in comparison to the Bosnian-Croat Federation? And it was really hard to maintain our strict, non-biased position. I am no expert in the area. I wouldn't put myself in a position where I would be giving advice to a country whose leadership, that's just not what we were there for. but I would give just one, minimal advice, which has been repeated over and over and over by all international institutions working in the country, which is go forward with constitutional reform. Go forward with getting rid of Dayton. No matter what comes out of that, I think that Dayton's time has expired, for better or for worse. It has expired, and now Bosnians, and by that I mean Croats, Bosniaks, and Serbs, have to take the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina into their hands.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the EU accession process of Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina, and how that affects the politics of the region. So both countries really want to get into the European Union, and they have progressed tremendously in the process of the accession process, but still they're not the official members. Serbia officially applied to be the member of the European Union in 2009, and it has already agreed on the final format of the document that the European Union and Serbia will eventually sign. But there are many deterrents to the finalization of the process. First of all, it's the heritage of the war in the 90s in Bosnia and Herzegovina. But even though there's that heritage, there are the flags of the European Union on the government buildings, even though Serbia is still not part of the European Union. So there's determination and there's drive to be part of the European Union. Apart from that, of course, there's the issue of Kosovo. Many European Union countries have recognized the independence of Kosovo, and Serbia is never going to do that. Serb officials want to separate the EU accession process from the question of Kosovo. But of course there's been a lot of positive influence of the EU accession process in Serbia. First of all, it improved the regional cooperation between countries. Serbia actively supports the integration of Bosnia and Herzegovina into the EU, and it wants the whole region to be part of that organization. So things are much more complicated in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because the country is in deep political crisis right now, as it has always been actually since the Dayton peace agreements, and you hear different opinions about the EU and the whole integration process. Serbs are unhappy as parts of unitary Bosnian states, and they say that they will never be part of a unitary Bosnian state. But on the other hand, they also want to be part of the EU. And Sarajevo, on the other hand, only thinks of a united Bosnia, and there's a lot of disagreement on that issue. When we went to the Republika Srpska in Banja Luka, during the meeting of the mayor, the officials emphasized sort of the European orientation of the city and how they are substantially part of Europe and not the outsiders. So generally there's this determination that they want to join the European Union.
I think I came in with a lot of theoretical understanding of the fact that after there's been an ethnic conflict of that magnitude, it's going to be difficult to rebuild, but I don't think I really actually fully understand what that means in terms of, the way people feel about what happened, in terms of the way entire governments are structured, and what it means if you are in a country with other people that are supposed to be your countrymen, but you don't necessarily feel that way.
So, of these diverse experiences, a single moment really stands out in my mind in terms of my understanding of what reconciliation is going to be required in the area. We, like other people mentioned, met with embassies, we met with NGOs, we met with presidents. But to me, the single moment where I realized that this place truly had a future in reconciliation was in a small town called Sanski Most in northwestern Bosnia. we were sitting in a room of the NGO that targets youth, and there were probably about 15 of the youth volunteers in there, and us as a group, and we were all going around and introducing ourselves. And Branko, who's from Serbia, introduced himself as, you know, my name's Branko, last name I can't pronounce still, and I'm from Serbia. And you saw all these heads turn, not because they're necessarily scared, but because these were people who had been so deeply affected by, you know, the war and had seen, I guess, violence from a major group of, you know, Serbian soldiers, and kind of this tension in the room, like it was this huge pregnant pause, and I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how people were going to react, and he finished it by saying, you know, and I'm here because this is what I believe in, and I believe that we as, like, the youth are the future, and we need to be able to talk and sit in the same room, and there was this huge relief. I don't think I've felt such respect for anyone at any moment on this trip. That took such courage to sit in a room full of people who, you know, have nothing but bad biases against you, and sit there and say, like, I'm not only here, this isn't my only purpose, but I'm here because I want to understand how you feel and what you've experienced and how you were affected, and share the same, you know, from myself to you. I think the most horrific thing was this was not, you know, a strange army invading a strange land. These were people's neighbors, people's friends, you know, people's schoolmates, and to become whole again, not necessarily as a country or as another Yugoslavia, but as functioning societies, and as functioning people. There's a level of communication that's required before reconciliation. And this obviously involves a lot of other things. This involves the politics. This involves education in a huge way. This involves better infrastructure. But I think it does come down to people being willing to sit down and talk with each other, and want to understand and want to get past the history they've been taught, or indoctrinated with, and find a way to hear someone else's side of the story.
So the history has been overshadowed by this war of 92-95, and I think that's truly emblematic of what's actually happened to Bosnia and Herzegovina. You had a peaceful Yugoslavia that was lived together, united, and had a peaceful history. Yes, there was the Battle of Kosovo, but, you know, intermarriage was going on, everything was being smoothed over. People didn't look to ethnicity. It was a nationality. It was, you were Yugoslav first. And now all of that common history has been shot through, has been riddled with bullet holes. And I think that's really emblematic with the identity crisis that's going on. The war in 92-95, I think, really forced people to identify themselves as either a Bosniak, a Muslim, a Croat, or a Serb. Whereas those identifications were artificial. They didn't really exist before 92-95. Clearly the religions were there, but that's not what was foremost in people's minds.
My favorite part of this trip is probably not one event, but just how nice people were. It's just incredible to me that people would set aside so much of their time to come and talk to us, and they seemed like they actually really, really cared about us understanding. And we asked so many questions, and some of them were probably very hard questions for those people to answer, but I felt like they really took us seriously and they answered honestly. And, you know, when we went to the foreign ministry in Serbia, the lady said to us, we really want you to be ambassadors for us and to understand us so that you can represent us to the outside world. And I feel like with how nice they were to us and how much time they took, I almost feel like a responsibility to do that. So